President Tokayev appealing overnight to that Russian-led Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO. It includes 5 other former Soviet states. And within hours, the alliance saying the first troops had been sent in. Russian media showing pictures of paratroopers and military units. Other CSTO members also taking part. It's the first major joint action since its founding in 1991. Our correspondent Felix Light is in the Russian capital. How is this story being covered where you are?
Well, Francois, certainly, I think the earlier there was a sort of an ambiguous tone, I think, in Russian coverage and Russian state media, owed simply, I think, to the fact that these protests really came out of nowhere. No one was expecting them, and I think the whole country, Russia certainly, was astonished by how large they got and how quickly. Indeed, yesterday, specifically yesterday. Right now, I think we've seen a sort of a slight pivot in tone, where before it was a question more of sort of emphasizing the legitimate character of these protests because they were initially economic. They weren't really political. They didn't really threaten a revolution or anything. More recently, we've seen sort of emphases that these are sort of bandits or marauders. These are the words of sort of Russian loyalist news sources, what you'll see. And I think this is sort of part of an effort to sort of sell the idea of intervention to the Russian people. You know, this isn't an especially substantial intervention quite yet, but it isn't something that needs sort of consent to be manufactured for it. And the Russian people generally aren't in a particularly sort of interventionist mood geopolitically, I would say, right now. So what we see here is really sort of trying to sell the public on a sort of a fairly limited police action so far.
And it's not just Russian forces that are stepping in this instance.
It's not, no, but I mean the Russians are making up sort of the vast bulk of the deployment. We've seen about 3,000 troops from Russia and perhaps about 1,000 altogether from the rest of the members of the CSTO. But then I would stress again that 3,000 troops is not an enormous sort of military deployment. It's really an attempt to sort of, I think, signal moral support for the Kazakhstani government rather than it is to sort of make a meaningful contribution to putting down these protests. I suspect that on the front lines of sort of the protests, on the front lines of the regime in Kazakhstan defending itself, we'll continue to see Kazakh security forces. I shouldn't think that 3,000 Russian paratroopers will make a huge difference, but it is, of course, hugely important in signaling Russian support. You know, you'll remember from 2020 when Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko there was beset with protests, and it was really that idea that Russia was behind him, that he could count on sort of Moscow's resources that really saw him hang on in office. So I suspect a similar sort of thing is going to go happen in Kazakhstan now.
Yeah, because in Belarus, it caught everyone by surprise. No one ever expected there would be protests that big. And now this has caught everyone by surprise. The mood at the Kremlin right now?
I would say the Kremlin is relatively relaxed with regards to Kazakhstan. I think certainly Belarus was extremely disturbing to the Kremlin simply because Belarus, by virtue of its geography, it borders Europe. It has more sort of options geopolitically, if you like. Kazakhstan is in a much more sort of vulnerable position, or vulnerable perhaps is the wrong word, but it's very sort of economically integrated with Moscow. It's clearly not a sort of even a bordering state that you're. There are relatively few sort of competitors for sort of a serious influence in the way that Moscow has there. So I suspect they're relatively relaxed, although, of course, you know, the Russians are never pleased to see any kind of sort of upheaval or disturbance in their sort of near abroad, as you may say. And so I think, you know, they will be pleased to sort of see this problem go away, as it were.
Felix Light reporting live from Moscow. Many thanks. I want to